I didn't expect you to actually show up. Those were the first words Victoria Hale said to the man who would eventually break through every wall she'd spent years building. She sat there in an oversized sweatshirt 2 sizes too big, hair deliberately messy, no makeup, a billionaire disguised as someone who'd given up. Across from her, Ethan Blake, a single father with paint-stained hands and tired eyes, didn't look away. He didn't leave. He just smiled and said, "Neither did I." What started as sabotage became something neither could control. This is their story. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if it moves you, hit that like button. Now, let's begin. The coffee shop on Archer Street had seen better days. The paint on the walls was chipping in places where the afternoon sun hit too hard, and the espresso machine made a grinding noise that suggested it was one bad day away from retirement. Still, it had charm, the kind that came from mismatched furniture, local art nobody understood, and baristas who remembered your order even when you wished they wouldn't. Ethan Blake pushed through the door at exactly 3:47 p.m., 13 minutes late. He hated being late. It felt disrespectful, like he was saying his time mattered more than someone else's. But his daughter Maya's school had called about a permission slip he'd forgotten to sign. And by the time he doubled back home and then fought crosstown traffic, those 13 minutes had evaporated. He scanned the room quickly. His friend Derek had set this up. Another one of those "you need to get back out there, man" interventions that Ethan had stopped fighting 6 months ago. Derek meant well. He always did. But Ethan had learned that meaning well and doing well were often galaxies apart. Then he saw her. She sat in the back corner, hunched over like she was trying to physically shrink into the oversized gray sweatshirt that swallowed her frame. Her jeans had a hole in one knee that looked accidental rather than fashionable. No jewelry, no makeup that he could tell. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail that seemed designed to say, "I stopped caring." Everything about her screamed, "Leave me alone." Ethan almost turned around. This woman clearly didn't want to be here, and he wasn't about to force conversation on someone who'd already decided the date was a waste of time. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way her fingers drummed against her coffee cup, or how her eyes kept darting to the door like she was calculating escape routes. She wasn't bored. She was nervous. He walked over. Her eyes snapped up, and for just a second, he saw something flicker across her face. Surprise, maybe. Or disappointment. Hard to tell. "Victoria?" he asked. "I didn't expect you to actually show up," she said. Her voice was flat, almost challenging. Ethan pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. "Neither did I." Her eyebrow raised slightly. "Honest, that's different. My daughter says I'm bad at lying. Apparently my left eye twitches." "Does it?" "I have no idea, but she's 8 and she's terrifying, so I believe her." Victoria's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "You brought up your daughter in the first 30 seconds. That's either really good strategy or really bad game." "I don't have game," Ethan said simply. "I have a second grader who needs help with fractions and a dog who eats shoes. My life isn't mysterious." She studied him for a moment, like she was trying to figure out what angle he was playing. "So why are you here?" "Derek said I needed to meet new people." "You?" "My assistant said the same thing. Apparently I'm emotionally unavailable and projecting my trauma onto workplace relationships." She said it like she was quoting directly, with just enough sarcasm to make it sting. "Is she right?" "Probably, but I pay her enough not to say it to my face." Ethan laughed, a real laugh that caught him off guard. "Fair enough." Victoria leaned back, arms crossed. She was still guarded, still ready to bolt, but something had shifted. The wall was still there, but maybe a window had cracked open. "So what do you do?" she asked. It was a standard question, the kind people asked when they were filling space, but the way she said it suggested she didn't actually care about the answer. She was testing whether he'd give her a rehearsed pitch. "I restore furniture," Ethan said. "Old stuff mostly. Chairs, tables, cabinets. Things people think are broken beyond fixing. And are they? Sometimes. But usually they just need someone willing to put in the work." Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. That sounds like a metaphor. It's not. I literally sand wood for a living. She almost smiled again. Almost. What about the single dad thing? How's that working out? Some days are better than others. Yesterday, Maya told me I was ruining her life because I wouldn't let her get a pet snake. Today, she made me breakfast and told me I was the best dad in the world. I'm just trying to keep up. Sounds exhausting. It is, Ethan admitted, but it's the kind of exhausting that matters, you know? Victoria didn't respond right away. She looked down at her coffee cup, fingers still drumming that same anxious rhythm. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. I don't know if I do. Ethan didn't push. He'd learned, through years of single parenting and too many mistakes to count, that silence was sometimes the kindest thing you could offer someone. The barista called out an order and the noise jolted Victoria back to the present. She straightened in her chair, walls rebuilding in real time. So, what's your story? Ethan asked, redirecting before she could retreat completely. Besides emotionally unavailable and projecting trauma, you want the short version or the version that'll make you leave? Try me. She took a breath. I run a business. Well, several businesses. I'm not great at relationships. Actually, I'm terrible at them. The last person I trusted cleaned out my accounts and disappeared, so now I don't trust anyone. And I came here today dressed like this. She gestured at her outfit. Because I figured if you were shallow enough to care, we'd both save time. Ethan processed that. That's a lot. Yeah. And the businesses? What about them? What kind? Victoria hesitated. This was usually where it fell apart, where people heard what she did, saw the dollar signs, and suddenly became different versions of themselves. Real estate, tech, some investment stuff. It's complicated. Sounds like it. Ethan flagged down the barista and ordered a coffee for himself and asked if Victoria wanted another. She shook her head but looked surprised he'd asked. When the barista left, Ethan leaned forward slightly. For what it's worth, I don't care what you're wearing, and the trust thing makes sense. Getting burned like that would mess anyone up. You don't know the half of it. You're right, I don't. But I know what it's like to have your life turned upside down by someone you thought you could count on. Something in his tone made Victoria pause. Your ex? Yeah, she left when Maya was 2. Just decided being a mom wasn't what she wanted anymore. Haven't heard from her since. That's a lot, Ethan finished. We both seem to have a lot. Victoria laughed, short and sharp, but genuine. We're a mess. Absolutely. They sat there for a moment, two people who'd been shattered in different ways, recognizing something familiar in each other's broken pieces. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. Sure. Why aren't you running? Most guys would have heard trust issues and complicated and been out the door. Ethan considered the question. I guess because I'm not looking for easy. Easy left me 6 years ago. I'm just looking for real. And you think I'm real? I think you showed up in a sweatshirt 2 sizes too big, hoping I wouldn't. I think you're scared and guarded and probably ready to walk out of here the second I say something that sets off alarm bells. And yeah, that feels pretty real to me. Victoria stared at him like he'd just solved an equation she'd been working on for years. You're either really smart or really naive. Probably both. That's not reassuring. Wasn't trying to be. The conversation drifted after that. Safer topics like books and coffee preferences and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Victoria argued it was a crime against food. Ethan defended it with the passion of someone who'd eaten too many budget Tuesdays at the pizza place near his workshop. You're wrong, Victoria said, but she was almost smiling. I'm absolutely right, and deep down you know it. I know nothing of the sort. An hour passed without either of them noticing. Then another. The coffee shop started filling up with the after-work crowd, and the noise level rose around them, but they stayed in their corner booth, trading stories that felt both significant and ordinary. Victoria told him about a business deal that had fallen apart because she'd trusted the wrong partner. Ethan told her about the time Maya got sent home from school for telling another kid that Santa wasn't real because Dad says lying is wrong. What did you do? Victoria asked. I had a very long conversation with her about context and appropriate timing. Did it work? She told the same kid the tooth fairy was fake 2 weeks later, so no.
Victoria laughed, really laughed this time, and the sound caught Ethan completely off guard. It was bright and unguarded, the kind of laugh that didn't match the carefully constructed armor she'd walked in wearing. "Your kid sounds like a nightmare," she said. "She is, but she's my nightmare." Something in Victoria's expression softened. "You're a good dad." "I'm trying to be. Most days I feel like I'm faking it and hoping she doesn't notice." "I think that's called parenting." "Yeah, probably." When Victoria finally checked her phone, it was almost 6. "I should go." Ethan nodded, trying not to show his disappointment.
"Yeah, me too. I need to pick up Maya from my neighbors." They stood, and for a second the air between them felt heavy with something neither could quite name. "This was—" Victoria started, then stopped. "I didn't expect this. Neither did I. Would you want to do it again sometime?" Ethan felt his heart kick against his ribs. "Yeah, I would." "Okay." She grabbed a napkin and borrowed a pen from the barista, scribbling down her number. "Text me or don't, whatever." She tried to sound casual, but Ethan caught the slight tremor in her voice, the fear underneath the indifference. "I will," he said. Victoria nodded once, then turned and walked out. Ethan watched her go, the napkin with her number folded carefully in his hand. He texted her that night. Just something simple. Made it home. "Maya wants to know if you also think pineapple pizza is wrong. I told her you had good taste." 3 minutes later, his phone buzzed. "Tell Maya she's absolutely right. Also, I had a good time today." Which is weird for me. Weird in a good way or weird in a call the authorities way? Still deciding. Fair enough. "Want to hang out this weekend? There's a book sale at the community center." Warning, it's extremely boring and there will be senior citizens arguing about first editions. That sounds terrible. It really is. "What time?" They met that Saturday at 10 in the morning. The community center gym had been transformed into a maze of folding tables covered in boxes of used books. The smell of old paper and must hung in the air, and somewhere in the back, 2 elderly women were indeed arguing about whether a 1952 printing of The Old Man and the Sea counted as a first edition. Victoria showed up in jeans and a sweater, still casual but less aggressively so than their first meeting. Her hair was down this time, falling past her shoulders in waves that looked effortless but probably weren't. "You actually came," Ethan said. "You sound surprised." "A little. I told you I would." "You also said you were bad at relationships. I figured showing up might not be your strong suit." Victoria's expression flickered. Something that might have been pain, quickly covered. "I'm working on it." They wandered through the tables together, pulling out random books and reading terrible back-cover copy to each other. Victoria found a romance novel with a shirtless pirate on the cover and read the first paragraph in the most dramatic voice possible. Ethan countered with a self-help book called Unlock Your Inner Warrior that featured a man in a suit punching a waterfall. "Why is he punching a waterfall?" Victoria asked. "To unlock his inner warrior, obviously." "That's not how waterfalls work." Maybe his inner warrior doesn't care about physics." She snorted. "You're ridiculous. You laughed." "Against my better judgment." They bought 8 books between them, a mix of mystery novels, a cookbook from the 70s with truly alarming Jell-O salad recipes, and a collection of short stories that Ethan said Maya might like when she was older. "You think about her a lot," Victoria observed as they walked out. "Every decision I make factors her in somehow. It's just how my brain works now." "That must be exhausting." "Sometimes, but she's worth it." They grabbed lunch at a diner 2 blocks away, the kind of place with red vinyl booths and waitresses who called everyone Hananasidisa. Victoria ordered a grilled cheese and tomato soup. Ethan got a burger that came with fries he immediately started stealing from the basket before his actual plate arrived. "Tell me about your businesses," Ethan said, dragging a fry through ketchup. Victoria tensed slightly. "Why?" "Because you mentioned them once and then changed the subject, which means either you're ashamed of them or you think I'll react badly." Option B. Why would I react badly? She took a breath. "Because I'm not just successful, Ethan. I'm wealthy, really wealthy. And when people find out exactly how wealthy, They either start treating me like an ATM or like I'm some kind of alien species. Ethan processed that. How wealthy are we talking? Does it matter? I'm just trying to understand the scale. Victoria met his eyes. Billionaire. I'm a billionaire. The diner felt suddenly very quiet, even though nothing had actually changed. The same clatter of dishes and murmur of conversation continued around them, but in their booth, something had shifted. Ethan sat back. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Victoria's eyes narrowed. That's it? No questions about how much exactly, or what I own, or whether I can buy you things? Should I have those questions? Most people do. Ethan picked up another fry, considering. Look, I'm not going to pretend that's not a lot to take in, because it is. But you're still the same person who wore an oversized sweatshirt to scare me off and argued about pineapple pizza for 20 minutes. The money doesn't change that. It changes everything, Ethan. It always does. Only if we let it. Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. You have no idea what you're talking about. You're right, I don't. But I know I liked spending time with you at the coffee shop and at that book sale. And unless you're a completely different person than I think you are, I don't see why that should change. Because people always change when they find out. They start seeing dollar signs instead of me. Then they're idiots. Or they're realistic. Ethan leaned forward. Here's what I'm realistic about.
I'm a single dad who refinishes furniture in a workshop that smells like varnish and sawdust. I drive a 10-year-old truck. I budget for groceries. My idea of a nice night out is anywhere that has high chairs and doesn't judge when my kid inevitably spills something. We live in completely different worlds, and I'm not naive enough to think that won't be complicated. Then why are you still here? Because complicated doesn't mean impossible. And because I'd rather try and fail than walk away from something just because it's hard. Victoria stared at him across the table, and Ethan watched her walls crack just a little more. Not breaking. Not yet, but definitely fracturing. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, she said finally. My friends lean towards stupid. Smart friends. The smartest. She picked up her spoon, stirring her soup slowly. If we do this, if we try this, it can't be fast. I need slow. I need honest. I need to know you're here because you want to be, not because of what I have. I can do slow, and honest is all I've got. What about Maya? What about her? Kids complicate things, especially when the person you're dating is, she gestured vaguely at herself. A billionaire. I was going to say damaged, but sure. Ethan smiled. Maya's met a few people I've dated. She has opinions. What kind of opinions? Strong ones. She told my last girlfriend that her perfume smelled like toilet cleaner. Victoria actually laughed. Was she right? 100%. But that's not the point. What is the point? That I don't introduce her to people unless I think they matter. So if we do this, and it gets to that point, you'll meet her, but only when we're both ready. And if she hates me? Then we'll deal with it, but I have a feeling she won't. Why? Because you wore a sweatshirt to sabotage a date and still showed up. That's the kind of thing Maya would respect. Victoria shook her head, but she was smiling. You're weird. I get that a lot. They finished lunch and walked back toward where they'd parked. The afternoon sun cut through the buildings at sharp angles, painting everything in gold and shadow. So what now? Victoria asked when they reached her car, a black sedan that was nice but not flashy, like she was trying to blend in. Now we take it slow, Ethan said. We keep hanging out, we keep being honest, and we see where it goes. Just like that? Just like that. Victoria unlocked her car but didn't get in. Thank you. For what? For not running, for not changing, for... She trailed off, searching for words. For treating me like a person. You are a person. You'd be surprised how many people forget that. Ethan stepped closer, not invading her space, just closing the distance slightly. I won't forget. She looked up at him, and for just a moment all the armor was gone. She was just Victoria, scared and hopeful and trying to believe that maybe, just maybe, this could be different. I'll text you, she said. I'll answer. She got in her car and drove away, and Ethan stood there in the parking lot, feeling like something important had just started, something fragile and uncertain, but real. His phone buzzed. That was nice. Let's do it again. He smiled and typed back, anytime. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Coffee on Tuesdays when Ethan could get his neighbor to watch Maya for an hour. Lunch on Saturdays at different hole-in-the-wall places Victoria had never been to because her world didn't usually include diners with laminated menus. She told him about her businesses in pieces, carefully at first, watching for the moment his eyes would change. But that moment never came. Ethan asked questions about logistics and strategy, genuinely interested in how she'd built everything, but never once did he ask what he could get out of it. He told her about Maya's school struggles and victories, about the chair he was restoring for a client who'd inherited it from her grandmother, about the way his hands ache sometimes after long days in the workshop. They didn't kiss, didn't even hold hands, but somehow the space between them kept shrinking. Tell me about him, Ethan said one afternoon as they sat in his truck outside Maya's school, waiting for pickup time. The guy who screwed you over. Victoria had known this was coming eventually. His name was Marcus. We were engaged. How long? 2 years together, engaged for 6 months before I found out he'd been systematically draining accounts and setting up fraudulent contracts. By the time I realized what was happening, he'd disappeared with millions and left me buried in debt and legal trouble. Ethan's jaw tightened. How long ago? 3 years. I've spent every day since rebuilding what he destroyed. Did they catch him? Eventually. He's in prison now, but the money was gone and the damage to my reputation. She shook her head. People still look at me and wonder if I was in on it, like I'm either a criminal or an idiot. You're neither. Tell that to the board members who pushed me out of my own company for 6 months. You got it back? I fought for it. Took almost a year, but yeah, I got it back. Ethan reached over and took her hand, the first real physical contact between them beyond accidental brushes and brief hugs goodbye. His fingers were rough from work, but warm. I'm sorry that happened to you, he said. Victoria looked down at their joined hands. It taught me not to trust people. I know. And yet here you are. Here I am. She squeezed his hand. You're either very patient or very foolish. Still voting for foolish? Ask me in 6 months. The school bell rang and Ethan reluctantly let go of her hand. You want to meet her? Victoria's eyes widened. Now? No pressure. But she's been asking questions, and I'm tired of being vague. What kind of questions? The 8-year-old kind. Who keeps texting you? Why are you smiling at your phone? Is she pretty? What did you tell her? That yes, you're pretty, and you make me happy. Victoria felt something crack open in her chest. Something vulnerable and terrifying. Okay? Yeah? Yeah, let's do this. Maya Blake was a whirlwind in a purple backpack. She burst out of the school doors, talking a mile a minute about something that happened at recess, her words tumbling over each other in a way that made them almost impossible to follow. Then she saw Victoria and stopped dead. Hi, Victoria said, suddenly very aware that she had no idea how to talk to children. Maya looked at her dad. Is this her? This is Victoria. Victoria, this is Maya. Maya walked around Victoria in a slow circle, like she was assessing a science project. You're taller than I thought. Is that good or bad? Victoria asked. Still deciding. Maya climbed into the back seat. Do you like pizza? Depends on the pizza. What about pineapple pizza? Victoria met Ethan's eyes in the rearview mirror. He was grinning. It's a crime against food. Maya pumped her fist. I knew it. Dad, she agrees with me. Traitor, Ethan muttered. They dropped Maya at home with Ethan's neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who took one look at Victoria and gave Ethan a very obvious thumbs up when she thought Victoria wasn't looking. She's adorable, Victoria said when they were back in the truck. She's a menace. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Ethan smiled. No, they're not. They sat there for a moment, the engine idling, neither quite ready to say goodbye. I'm scared, Victoria admitted quietly. Of what? This, you. The fact that I'm starting to care about you, and I have no idea how to do this without screwing it up.
Ethan turned to face her. You want to know what scares me? What? That you'll wake up one day and realize your life was easier before I showed up. That the complications I bring, the single dad thing, the modest life, all of it, will stop being worth the effort. That's not going to happen. You can't know that. Neither can you. They sat with that truth between them, both scared, both damaged, both choosing to try anyway. Slow, Victoria said. Honest, Ethan added, and we keep talking, no matter what. Deal. Victoria leaned over and kissed his cheek, quick and light, but intentional. I need to go. Okay. She got out of the truck and walked to her car. Before she drove away, she looked back at him through the windshield and mouthed, Thank you. Ethan sat there long after she'd gone, his hand touching the spot where her lips had been, feeling like maybe, just maybe, they were building something that could last. But neither of them knew that the hardest part was still coming. The first crack in their carefully constructed world appeared 3 weeks later, on a Wednesday that started like any other. Victoria was in a board meeting when her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. She ignored it at first. She always ignored her phone during meetings. But when it buzzed 3 more times in quick succession, she excused herself. We have a problem. Maya's school called. Some kid's parents saw us together. They're asking questions. Victoria felt ice slide down her spine. She stepped into the hallway, her heels clicking against marble floors as she dialed him back. What kind of questions? She asked when he picked up. The invasive kind. Ethan sounded tired. Apparently someone recognized you. Now there's speculation about who I am and why the billionaire Victoria Hale is picking up kids from Monroe Elementary. Did they approach Maya? No, but they approached other parents, and you know how that goes. Victoria did know. She'd spent years watching people dissect her life, turning every decision into gossip, every relationship into a transaction. She just hoped, foolishly maybe, that this would stay private a little longer. I'm sorry, she said. It's not your fault. It is, though. My life comes with complications. I warned you about this. Yeah, you did. Doesn't make it easier. She could hear the strain in his voice, the weight of trying to protect his daughter from something he couldn't control. What do you want to do? I don't know. Keep going, I guess. But Victoria, if this affects Maya, it won't. I'll make sure of it. You can't promise that. He was right, and they both knew it. Victoria pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window overlooking the city. 43 floors below, people moved like ants, none of them aware that her world was starting to tilt. We knew this would be complicated, she said finally. Knowing it and living it are different things. I know. A long pause stretched between them. Victoria waited, holding her breath, wondering if this was the moment he'd decide it wasn't worth it. Maya wants to know if you can come to her piano recital Friday, Ethan said quietly. Victoria blinked. What? She's been practicing this piece for weeks. She asked if you'd come watch. She wants me there? Yeah, she does. Something in Victoria's chest loosened. I'll be there. It starts at 6, the school auditorium. Fair warning, there will be at least 12 renditions of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in various states of disaster. Sounds perfect. When she hung up, Victoria stood in that hallway for a long moment, staring at her reflection in the dark window. She looked composed, professional, exactly like the woman who'd built an empire from rubble. But underneath, she felt like a girl who'd just been invited to something that mattered more than any board meeting ever would. She went back into the conference room and wrapped up the meeting in 10 minutes flat, making decisions with the kind of cold efficiency that had earned her both respect and fear. When everyone filed out, her CFO lingered. Everything okay? Marcus Chen asked. Different Marcus, no relation to the one who'd destroyed her, just an unfortunate coincidence of names. Fine, family thing. His eyebrows raised. Victoria didn't talk about family. She didn't talk about anything personal. If you need, I don't, but thank you. He nodded and left, but Victoria caught the concerned look he shot her assistant on his way out. They were worried about her. They'd been worried for 3 years, watching her rebuild herself into something harder and more distant than before. Maybe it was time to stop being quite so distant. Friday came faster than Victoria expected.
She spent an absurd amount of time deciding what to wear to an elementary school piano recital, cycling through outfits like she was preparing for a summit. Too formal would look condescending, too casual would look like she wasn't taking it seriously. She settled on dark jeans and a simple sweater, the kind of thing normal people wore to normal events. When she looked in the mirror, she almost didn't recognize herself. The auditorium was exactly what Ethan had promised, packed with proud parents holding phones, squirming siblings, and a stage decorated with construction paper music notes. Victoria slipped into the back row, trying to be invisible. That lasted approximately 4 minutes. "You're her, aren't you?" Victoria turned to find a woman in her 40s staring at her with the kind of recognition that made Victoria's stomach drop. "I'm sorry?" "Victoria Hale, I saw your picture in Forbes last month." The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. "My husband works in commercial real estate, says you're ruthless." "Does he? So what are you doing at Monroe Elementary?" Victoria met the woman's gaze steadily. "Watching a piano recital." "For whose kid?" "A friend's." The woman's smile sharpened. "Must be some friend." Before Victoria could respond, the lights dimmed and a teacher walked onto the stage to welcome everyone. Victoria turned back to face forward, acutely aware of the woman beside her pulling out her phone. Maya performed 7th. She walked onto the stage in a blue dress, her hair in braids that Ethan had clearly attempted himself. One was slightly higher than the other. She sat at the piano, adjusted the bench twice, then looked out into the audience until she found her dad. Then she found Victoria. The smile that broke across her face was so genuine, so uncomplicated, that Victoria felt something crack in her chest. Maya waved, small and quick, before turning back to the keys. She played the entertainer. And she was good. Not prodigy good, but solid. The kind of good that came from practice and effort, and a dad who probably sat through that song 1,000 times. She stumbled once in the middle section but recovered, her face scrunched in concentration. When she finished, the applause was warm and genuine. Maya stood, took a bow that was more of a wobble, then practically ran off the stage. Victoria waited until the recital ended before making her way to where Ethan and Maya stood in the lobby. Maya saw her first and launched herself forward. "Did you see? I only messed up once." "You were amazing," Victoria said, and meant it. "Dad said you'd come, but I wasn't sure because you're always busy with important stuff." This was important stuff. Maya beamed. Then her expression shifted, something more serious crossing her face. "Some kids at school said their parents think you're using my dad for money. But that's stupid because we don't have money, right, Dad?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Maya, it's okay," Victoria said quietly. She crouched down to Maya's eye level. "People say a lot of things that aren't true. What matters is that your dad and I know the truth, and so do you." "So you're not using him?" "No, I'm not." "And you actually like him, because he's kind of weird." "Hey," Ethan protested. "He is weird," Victoria agreed. "But I like him anyway." Maya nodded, satisfied. "Okay, good. Can we get ice cream now?" They went to a place 3 blocks away, a tiny shop with a chalkboard menu and mismatched chairs. Maya ordered chocolate with gummy bears on top, a combination that made Victoria's teeth hurt just looking at it. Ethan got vanilla. Victoria got strawberry and immediately regretted it when Maya declared it boring. "Not everyone needs gummy bears in their ice cream," Victoria defended. "Yeah, but it's better with them." "Agree to disagree." They sat outside even though the evening was cooling down, watching cars pass and people walk dogs. Maya swung her legs under the table, talking nonstop about school and piano and her friend Jessica, who could do a cartwheel. "You should come over for dinner sometime," Maya announced suddenly. "Dad makes really good spaghetti. Well, it's okay, but he tries hard." "Maya," Ethan said, warning in his tone. "What? You do try hard." Victoria smiled. "I'd like that." "Really?" Maya's eyes lit up. "Really? Can we do Sunday? Dad doesn't work Sundays usually." Ethan met Victoria's eyes over Maya's head. There was a question there and a concern. Inviting her into their home, into their life in that concrete way, felt like crossing a line. Victoria nodded.
Sunday works. After they dropped Maya at home, Ethan's house, a small two-bedroom with a yard that needed mowing and flower beds that needed weeding, he walked Victoria to her car. "You don't have to come Sunday if it's too much," he said. "I want to." "She's getting attached to you. Is that a problem?" Ethan shoved his hands in his pockets. "I don't know yet. I just don't want her to get hurt if this doesn't work out." "And what about you? What about me? Do you not want to get hurt either?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Too late for that. I'm already invested." Victoria stepped closer. "So am I." "Yeah?" "Yeah." He kissed her then, soft and careful, like he was afraid she might disappear if he pushed too hard. Victoria kissed him back, her hands finding the front of his jacket, anchoring herself to something real. When they pulled apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "This is going to get messy, isn't it?" "Probably." "And you're okay with that?" "I'm terrified of it, but I'm more terrified of walking away." He smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made her believe maybe they could actually do this. "Sunday at 6. I'll be there." Victoria drove home to her penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that cost more than most people's cars. It was beautiful and empty, and exactly the kind of space she'd built for herself after Marcus, a fortress where no one could touch her. Except Ethan had touched her, and Maya had touched her. And now the fortress felt less like protection and more like isolation. Sunday arrived with rain. Victoria stood outside Ethan's house at exactly 6 o'clock, holding a bottle of wine she'd spent too long selecting and a book for Maya she hoped wasn't too advanced. She felt ridiculous and nervous and completely out of her depth. Maya opened the door before she could knock. "You came!" "I said I would. People say stuff they don't mean all the time. Dad says that's called being polite." She grabbed Victoria's hand and pulled her inside. "Come on, dinner's almost ready, and Dad's freaking out because the garlic bread might be burned." The house was small and lived in, with Maya's backpack dumped by the door and shoes scattered in the entryway. The walls were covered in photos. Maya at different ages, Ethan and Maya at the beach. Maya's artwork held up with magnets. It was chaotic and warm and nothing like Victoria's pristine apartment. She loved it. Ethan appeared from the kitchen, wearing an apron that said Grill Master, and looking harassed. "The bread's fine, mostly fine. Hi." "Hi. You look great. You have flour on your face." He wiped at his cheek, smearing it worse. Maya giggled. They ate at a small table in the kitchen, the kind with mismatched chairs and placemats Maya had made in art class. The spaghetti was actually good. Not fancy, but made with care. The garlic bread was slightly burnt on the edges, but perfectly buttery in the middle. "See?" Maya said. "Dad tries hard." "I can tell," Victoria said, and Ethan looked pleased. They talked about school and work and the neighbor's cat that kept trying to fight their garden hose. Maya asked Victoria questions with the kind of blunt curiosity only kids could pull off. "How much money do you actually have?" "Maya." Ethan's face flushed. "What?" Everyone's wondering. Victoria set down her fork. "A lot. More than I need, probably." "What do you do with it all?" "Some of it I invest, some I donate, some I save." "That sounds boring." "Sometimes it is." "Do you have a big house?" "I have an apartment. It's pretty big." "Bigger than this one?" "Yes." "Does it have a pool?" "The building has a pool." Maya's eyes widened. "Can I come swim sometime?" "Maya, you can't just invite yourself," but Ethan started. "She can come swim," Victoria interrupted. "If your dad says it's okay." Maya looked at her father with pleading eyes. Ethan sighed. "We'll talk about it." After dinner, Maya dragged Victoria to her room to show her the extensive rock collection she'd accumulated from various playgrounds. Each rock had a story, and Maya told them all in excruciating detail. Victoria sat on the floor and listened, genuinely fascinated by this tiny human who collected rocks and played piano and thought gummy bears belonged in ice cream. "I like you," Maya announced after the rock tour concluded. "I like you too." "Good. Because Dad's happier when you're around. He smiles more." Victoria felt her throat tighten. Does he? Yeah. He was really sad after Mom left. He tried to hide it, but I knew. Now he's less sad. I'm glad. Are you going to marry him? Maya! Ethan appeared in the doorway, looking mortified. Bedtime. Now. But I'm not tired. Now. Maya grumbled but got into her pajamas. Victoria took that as her cue to head downstairs, where she found Ethan pouring 2 glasses of wine with the expression of a man who'd just survived a natural disaster. I'm sorry, he said. She has no filter. I noticed. She really likes you. The feeling's mutual. Ethan handed her a glass. They moved to the small living room, sitting on a couch that had definitely seen better days but was comfortable in the way that mattered. She asked if we're getting married, Victoria said. I heard. Again, I'm sorry. Don't be. It was sweet. It was invasive. It was honest. Victoria took a sip of wine. She's worried about you. She's 8. She shouldn't have to worry. Kids worry anyway, especially when they love someone. Ethan turned to look at her. She does love easily. It scares me sometimes. Why? Because not everyone deserves it, and when people leave, it destroys her. I'm not going to leave. You can't promise that. You're right, I can't. Victoria set down her glass. But I can promise I'm going to try, really try, because this, she gestured between them, this matters to me. Ethan reached for her hand. It matters to me too. They sat there for a while, not talking, just existing in the same space. Victoria felt herself relaxing in a way she rarely did, like she didn't have to perform or protect herself. Then her phone rang. She ignored it. It rang again. You should get that, Ethan said. Victoria checked the screen and cursed under her breath. It's my assistant. She only calls this late if something's wrong. She answered. What happened? There's a photo, her assistant said without preamble. You and Ethan Blake. Someone took it at the piano recital and sold it to a gossip site. It's already trending. Victoria's stomach dropped. Send me the link. She pulled up the article on her phone. The photo showed her and Ethan outside the ice cream shop, his hand on her back, both of them smiling. The headline read, Billionaire Victoria Hale's Mystery Man, Single Dad or Gold Digger. The article was worse. It speculated about Ethan's intentions, questioned why she'd be slumming it with a furniture restorer, and included quotes from sources who claimed he was clearly using her for money and status. Ethan leaned over to read it. She watched his expression shudder. Ethan, it's fine. It's not fine. They're calling you a gold digger. Yeah, I can read. He stood up, pacing. This is what you meant about complications. Yes. And it's going to get worse. Probably. He ran a hand through his hair. Maya's going to see this. Kids at school are going to talk. Parents are going to whisper. I know, I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. You didn't write the article. No, but my life created it. Ethan stopped pacing. What do we do? We can ignore it. Eventually, something else will be more interesting. And if it doesn't go away? Victoria stood and walked over to him. Then we deal with it, together. You make it sound simple. It's not. But the alternative is letting them win, letting them decide that you're not good enough, or that I'm too damaged, or that what we have isn't real. She took his hands. Is that what you want? No. Then we keep going. We keep being honest, and we don't let anyone else define what this is. Ethan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. Victoria leaned into him, breathing in the smell of garlic and laundry detergent and something that was just him. I'm scared, he admitted quietly. Me too. But you're not running. Neither are you. They stood like that for a long time, holding on to each other while the world outside started paying attention in ways neither of them wanted. The next morning, Victoria woke up to 37 missed calls and twice as many text messages. The article had exploded overnight. Someone had dug up information about Ethan's ex-wife leaving, about his modest income, about every detail of his life that proved he was ordinary. And they'd weaponized all of it. Victoria sat in her office, scrolling through comment sections she knew she shouldn't read.
People had opinions. So many opinions. Some defended her right to date whoever she wanted. Others claimed she was clearly having some kind of breakdown. Most focused on Ethan, dissecting his motives and his worth. Her assistant knocked on the door. "Your mother's on line 3. Victoria closed her eyes. Of course she was. "Tell her I'm in a meeting." I tried. She said, "If you don't pick up, she's coming down here." That was not an empty threat. Victoria picked up the phone. "Victoria Marie Hale, what on earth is going on?" Her mother's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Good morning to you too, Mother." "Don't get smart with me." I wake up to find my daughter's face plastered across the internet with some random man. His name is Ethan. I don't care what his name is. Who is he? What does he want? And why wasn't I informed you were seeing someone? Victoria pinched the bridge of her nose. "Because I knew you'd react exactly like this." "Like what? Like a mother who's watching her daughter make another massive mistake?" "He's not Marcus." "How do you know?" "Because I know." Her mother sighed, the kind of sigh that carried decades of disappointment. "You said the same thing about Marcus, and look how that turned out." The words hit exactly where they were meant to. Victoria felt something cold settle in her chest. "This is different. Is it? Or are you just repeating the same pattern?" "I'm not having this conversation." "Victoria, I'll call you later." She hung up before her mother could respond. Her hands were shaking. Her phone buzzed with the text from Ethan. Maya's school called. Apparently some parents are concerned about the publicity affecting the children. They're asking us to keep a low profile. Victoria stared at the message. This was exactly what she'd feared. Her world bleeding into his, making everything harder. She called him. "I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing. This is my fault." "It's not. It's just life." "How's Maya?" "Confused. She doesn't understand why people care who I'm dating." "Did you explain it to her?" "I tried. Told her some people like to gossip about things that aren't their business. She asked if we should just stop going places together so people leave us alone." Victoria's heart cracked. "What did you say?" "I said that's not how life works. That we don't hide who we care about just because other people have opinions." "You're a good dad." "I'm a dad who's winging it and hoping I don't screw her up too badly." Victoria smiled despite everything. "I think you're doing better than you think." "Yeah, well, jury's still out." They talked for a few more minutes before Ethan had to go handle a client meeting. When Victoria hung up, she sat in her office overlooking the city and made a decision. She couldn't control what people said. She couldn't make the articles go away. But she could control how she responded. She called her publicist. "Set up a statement. Something simple. Confirm I'm seeing someone, ask for privacy, and make it clear his character isn't up for debate." "Are you sure?" "Sometimes silence is better." "I'm sure." The statement went out that afternoon. It was brief, professional, and said exactly what it needed to. She was in a relationship. It was private. And anyone questioning Ethan's integrity could direct their concerns elsewhere. It didn't stop the speculation, but it shifted the narrative. Suddenly, the conversation became about her right to privacy rather than his right to be in her life. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. That weekend, they decided to do something normal. Deliberately, aggressively normal. They took Maya to the zoo. The moment they walked through the gates, cameras started clicking. Paparazzi had apparently decided the zoo was prime territory. Maya noticed immediately. "Why are those people taking pictures of us?" she asked. "Because they're bored," Ethan said. "Ignore them." But it was hard to ignore. Every exhibit, every ice cream stop, every moment was documented. Victoria felt herself tensing, her protective walls rebuilding with each flash. Then Maya grabbed her hand. "The penguins are my favorite," she announced, pulling Victoria toward the exhibit. "They waddle funny, and Dad says they mate for life, which means they don't get divorced like people do." Victoria looked down at this small person holding her hand with complete trust, and something shifted. The cameras didn't matter. The articles didn't matter. What mattered was this moment, this child, this chance at something real. "Show me the penguins," she said. They spent 3 hours at the zoo. They saw penguins and lions and a reptile house that made Maya shriek with delight. Ethan bought overpriced cotton candy that turned everyone's tongues blue. Victoria took photos on her phone, Not for social media, just for herself. When they got back to the car, Maya was exhausted and happy, already half asleep in her car seat. "Today was good," Ethan said quietly. "Yeah, it was. Even with the cameras? Even with the cameras." He reached over and took her hand. "We're going to be okay." Victoria wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that love and determination were enough to overcome the difference between their worlds. But as they drove through the city, past buildings she owned and neighborhoods he'd never been able to afford, she couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was still ahead of them. And she was right. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by courier in an envelope so thick and formal, it might as well have been an illegal summons. Victoria stared at it for a full minute before opening it, already knowing what was inside. Her family wanted to meet Ethan. Not wanted, demanded. The dinner was scheduled for Saturday at her parents' estate. Black tie required, 7 o'clock sharp. No +1s beyond Ethan, no children. The subtext was clear. This was an evaluation, not a celebration. "You don't have to go," Victoria said when she called Ethan that evening. "I can make an excuse." "What kind of excuse?" "Any kind. Food poisoning, work emergency, alien invasion." She heard him smile through the phone. "Your family can't be that bad." "You have no idea what you're saying. So tell me." Victoria sat down on her couch, drawing her knees up. "My father built his fortune in manufacturing. Steel, concrete, industrial equipment. He's old money trying to pretend he's self-made. My mother came from actual old money and never lets anyone forget it. They think success is measured in portfolio size and social connections. And they don't think I measure up. They don't think anyone measures up. They barely think I measure up. Then why do you care what they think?" It was a fair question. Victoria had been asking herself the same thing for years. Because they're my family, and because some small, stupid part of me keeps hoping they'll surprise me. Have they ever? No. Then maybe it's time to stop hoping. Maybe, but I still have to go to this dinner. And if you're serious about this, about us, then you should come too. There was a pause. Victoria held her breath, waiting for him to find a reason to back out. She'd given him the perfect exit. All he had to do was take it. "What time should I pick you up?" he asked instead. Victoria felt something in her chest unclench. "You don't have to pick me up. I can drive." "Victoria, what time?" 6:30. "And Ethan?" "Yeah?" "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. I might embarrass you." "You won't." "You sound pretty sure about that." "I am." She wasn't, but she wanted to be. Saturday arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made everything feel dramatic. Victoria spent 2 hours getting ready, cycling through dresses before settling on something elegant but not ostentatious. Navy blue. Simple lines. Expensive, but not flashy. She wanted to look like herself, not like she was trying to prove anything. Ethan showed up at 6:30 exactly, wearing a suit that was clearly borrowed or rented. It fit well enough but had that slight stiffness of unfamiliar fabric. He looked uncomfortable and endearing and completely out of his element. "You look beautiful, Kit," he said when she opened the door. "You look terrified." "I am terrified. Your family sounds like they eat people for sport." "Only the weak ones." "That's not reassuring." Victoria stepped closer and adjusted his tie, which was crooked. "Just be yourself. That's all you need to be." "What if myself isn't enough?" She met his eyes. "Then they're idiots, and their opinion doesn't matter." "Easy for you to say." "No, it's not, but I'm saying it anyway." They drove to her parents' estate in Victoria's car, a sleek sedan that felt ostentatious next to Ethan's decade-old truck. The estate sat on 15 acres outside the city, all manicured lawns and old oak trees and the kind of wealth that whispered instead of shouted. "This is where you grew up?" Ethan asked as they pulled through the gates. "Part of the time, we had a place in the city too. Must have been nice." "It was lonely." He glanced at her. "Yeah? Big houses don't mean happy families." "No, I guess they don't." A valet took the car. A butler, her parents actually employed a butler,
opened the front door and led them to the sitting room where her parents waited like royalty granting an audience. Robert Hale stood when they entered, all 6'2" of him radiating the kind of authority that came from never being told no. He'd aged well, silver hair, sharp features, a body kept fit through expensive trainers and competitive golf. He wore his tuxedo like armor. Caroline Hale remained seated, a deliberate power move Victoria recognized instantly. Her mother was beautiful in that preserved way wealthy women often were, with expertly highlighted hair and a face that had seen the inside of the best dermatology offices money could buy. She wore diamonds that probably cost more than Ethan's house. "Victoria," her father said, kissing her cheek with the warmth of a business transaction. "You look well." "Thank you, Dad. This is Ethan Blake." "Ethan, my parents, Robert and Caroline."
Ethan extended his hand.
"Mr. Hale, Mrs. Hale, thank you for inviting me." Robert shook it, his grip probably too firm. "We were curious to meet the man who's been occupying our daughter's time." "Occupying makes it sound like a hostile takeover," Victoria said. Her mother's laugh was delicate and cutting. "Well, given your history, darling, can you blame us for being cautious?" And there it was. Less than 2 minutes in and they'd already brought up Marcus. "Mom, it's fine," Ethan interrupted smoothly. "I'd be cautious too if I were in your position." Caroline's eyebrow arched. "Would you?" "Of course, Victoria's been through a lot. Anyone who cares about her would want to make sure she's protected." It was the perfect answer, gracious without being weak, understanding without being a doormat. Victoria watched her mother's expression shift slightly, recalculating. "How thoughtful," Caroline said, in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "Please sit. Dinner will be ready shortly." They moved to the dining room, a space designed to intimidate with its vaulted ceilings and chandelier that probably cost more than a car. The table could seat 20, but was set for 4, making the space feel even more cavernous. Dinner started with polite small talk that felt like a verbal fencing match. Her father asked about Ethan's business with the kind of casual interest that was actually judgment. "Furniture restoration," Robert said, swirling his wine. "That's quite a specialized field." "It is. There's good money in it if you know what you're doing." "And do you know what you're doing?" "I'd like to think so. Been doing it for 8 years now." "And before that?" "Construction, carpentry, whatever paid the bills after my ex-wife left." Victoria watched her parents exchange a glance. The ex-wife and single-father situation was clearly not sitting well. "That must have been difficult," Caroline offered, but there was no sympathy in it. "Raising a child alone. Some days more than others, but Maya's worth it." "Victoria mentioned you have a daughter. How old?" 8. "Such a formative age, she must require quite a bit of attention." "She does, but that's part of being a parent." "Indeed." Caroline took a sip of wine. "And how does she feel about her father dating someone like Victoria?" Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "Someone like Victoria?" "You know what I mean. Someone from a very different world." "Mom," Victoria warned, "it's a fair question, darling. Class differences can be quite challenging, especially for children." Ethan set down his fork with deliberate care. "Maya thinks Victoria is smart and kind and makes me happy. That's all that matters to her." "How refreshingly simple," Caroline said. "Children do have a way of oversimplifying complex situations." "Maybe adults have a way of overcomplicating simple ones." The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Robert cleared his throat. "So, Ethan, what exactly are your intentions with our daughter?" Victoria nearly choked on her water. "Dad, this isn't the 1800s. You can't just ask a—" "I'm serious about her," like Ethan said, cutting her off. "That's my intention, to be serious and honest and present." "That's quite vague. What would you like me to say? That I have a 5-year plan? That I know exactly where this is going?" Ethan leaned forward. "I can't promise you those things. What I can promise is that I care about Victoria, that I respect her, and that I'm not here for her money or her connections or anything else besides her." "How noble," Caroline said, "though it's easy to claim you're not interested in money when you're being wined and dined in homes like this." "Mom," Victoria's voice was sharp, "that's enough. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, this all looks remarkably familiar.
Another charming man, another whirlwind romance, another situation where you're making decisions with your heart instead of your head. You don't know anything about this, don't I? I watched Marcus destroy you, Victoria. Watched you lose everything you'd built because you trusted the wrong person. And now here you are again, with someone who has nothing to lose and everything to gain. Ethan stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. I think I should go. Ethan, Victoria reached for him. No, she's right. I don't belong here. He looked at Caroline directly. But you're wrong about one thing. I have plenty to lose. I have my daughter's trust, my self-respect, and the relationship I'm building with your daughter. Those things matter a hell of a lot more to me than money or houses or whatever else you think I'm after. He turned to Victoria. I'll wait in the car. The door closed behind him with a finality that made Victoria's chest ache. She turned to her parents, fury making her hands shake. How dare you? Victoria, her father started. No, don't. You invited him here just to humiliate him, to prove some point about class or worthiness or whatever outdated nonsense you've convinced yourselves matters. We're trying to protect you, her mother said. By attacking the first person who's made me happy in 3 years? By treating him like he's some kind of criminal just because he doesn't come from money? He doesn't just not come from money, Victoria. He's completely unsuitable. A single father with a modest income and no prospects? What could you possibly have in common? We have honesty. We have respect. We have actual conversations instead of performance art disguised as family dinners. Victoria threw her napkin on the table. And you know what? He's twice the person either of you are. How dare you speak to us that way? Her father said, his voice cold. How dare I? You just spent an hour interrogating someone I care about like he's on trial. You made assumptions about his character based on his bank account, and you dragged me here under false pretenses just to make both of us feel small. Victoria grabbed her purse. I'm done. Gocha Mesaya. Victoria Marie Hale, if you walk out that door, what? You'll disown me? Cut me off? Go ahead. I built my company once from nothing. I can do it again. She walked out before they could respond, her heels clicking on marble floors that suddenly felt like a prison. She found Ethan leaning against her car, staring up at the stars like they might have answers. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. You didn't say those things. I should have shut it down faster. You defended me. That's what matters. Victoria stepped closer to him. They're wrong about you. Are they? Because from where I'm standing, they made some good points. What? Victoria, look at this. He gestured at the estate. This is your world. Mansions and butlers and wine that probably costs more than my monthly mortgage. And then there's me, a guy who sands furniture and drives a truck that needs new brakes. So what? So maybe your mother's right. Maybe we're too different. You're seriously going to let them win? I'm seriously questioning whether I'm being fair to you, or to Maya. Because every time we go somewhere, there are cameras. Every time someone writes about us, they tear me apart and question your judgment. And now your own family thinks I'm using you. I don't care what they think, but I do. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Because they're your family, Victoria, and I'm just some guy you've been dating for a few months. What happens when the novelty wears off? When you realize you could have someone who actually fits in your world? You think this is novelty? I think we're caught up in the romance of it being hard, but hard doesn't mean right. Victoria felt tears threatening and pushed them back. Do you want to end this? Is that what you're saying? I'm saying I don't know if I'm enough for you, for this life. You are enough. You've always been enough. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because you're the only person who's ever looked at me and seen just me. Not my money, not my mistakes, just me. And if you think I'm going to let my parents' snobbery take that away, you're wrong. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. They really got to you, didn't they? They got to both of us. Yeah, they did. They stood there in the driveway, the estate looming behind them like a monument to everything that wanted to keep them apart. Victoria had never felt more distant from the place she'd grown up. Can we leave? She asked quietly. Where do you want to go? Anywhere but here. They drove for an hour without destination, just moving through the city as lights blurred past. Eventually, Ethan pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner, the kind with peeling paint and a neon sign that flickered. "This okay?" he asked. "Perfect." They sat in a booth by the window and ordered coffee they didn't really want. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, didn't recognize Victoria or care who they were. She just brought them coffee and pie and left them alone. "I hate that they made you doubt yourself," Victoria said. "They didn't. I was already doubting myself. They just said it out loud." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to seem weak or like I was giving up." Ethan stirred sugar into his coffee. "But Victoria, I see the way you live. The apartment, the cars, the clothes. And then I look at my life. The house that needs repairs I can't afford, the work truck, the constant juggling of bills and schedules. How do we make that work long term? We figure it out. That's not a plan. That's hope. What's wrong with hope? Nothing, but hope doesn't pay for Maya's college or fix the gap between our lives." Victoria reached across the table and took his hand. "Ethan, I don't care about the gap. I care about you. But I care about the gap because it means I can't give you the life you're used to. I can't take you to fancy restaurants or buy you expensive gifts or fit into your world the way someone else could. I don't want someone else. You say that now. I say that, period." Victoria squeezed his hand. "Do you know what I saw when I walked into that coffee shop 3 months ago? I saw someone who showed up even though he didn't want to. Someone honest and real and completely unlike everyone else in my life. That hasn't changed. But everything else has. The publicity, the pressure, your family. I've dealt with worse. We can handle this. Can we? Because I'm not sure Maya can. She's 8, Victoria. She shouldn't have to deal with photographers and gossip and people questioning whether her dad's a gold digger. Then we protect her. We set boundaries. We what? Keep hiding? Keep pretending this is sustainable?" Victoria felt panic rising in her chest. "You're talking like this is over. I'm talking like I don't know what we're doing anymore." They sat in silence, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. The waitress refilled their coffee with a sympathetic smile, like she'd seen this scene play out 1,000 times before. "I need you to be honest with me," Victoria said finally. "Do you want to end this? Right now, in this diner, do you want to walk away?" Ethan met her eyes. "No, but I don't know if wanting to stay is enough." "It has to be." "Why?" "Because the alternative is letting fear win, letting my parents win, letting every person who's ever judged us or doubted us or questioned our worth win." Victoria's voice cracked. "And I'm so tired of letting people win." Ethan's expression softened. "Victoria, I know this is hard. I know it's complicated and messy and nothing like what either of us planned, but I'm asking you to try, to keep trying, because losing you would hurt worse than anything my parents could ever say." He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "Okay. Okay. We keep trying, but Victoria, if this starts affecting Maya in ways I can't control, I have to put her first. I know, I wouldn't expect anything else. And we need to be realistic about what this means, about the differences between us. We can be realistic and still make it work. Can we? I don't know, but I want to find out." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then we find out, together." They left the diner and drove back to the city as dawn started breaking over the skyline. Ethan dropped Victoria at her apartment, and they sat in the car for a moment, neither wanting to let go. "I'm sorry about tonight," Victoria said. "Me too. My parents I know what they are." Ethan turned to face her. "But Victoria, they're not wrong about everything. We do come from different worlds. That's not judgment, that's just fact. Facts can change. Some of them, not all." She kissed him then, soft and desperate, trying to prove through touch what words couldn't quite capture. When they pulled apart, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "We're going to hit more walls like this," he said. "I know. And it's going to be hard. I know that too.
You still want to try? More than anything.
He smiled, tired but genuine. Then we try. Victoria got out of the car and watched him drive away, her chest tight with fear and hope in equal measure. She rode the elevator to her penthouse and stood in the middle of all that expensive emptiness, thinking about a small house with mismatched furniture and a little girl who collected rocks. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Made it home. Maya wants to know if you're okay. I told her you are. I hope I'm right. Victoria typed back, You are. Tell her I'm good. Tell her I'll see her soon. She says you're still invited to swim in your pool. Apparently she's been planning it all week. Tell her it's a date. I will. Victoria? Yeah? Thank you for standing up for me tonight. Thank you for being worth standing up for. She set down her phone and walked to the window, looking out over the city that had always felt like hers. Somewhere out there, Ethan was pulling into his driveway, checking on Maya, living a life that was smaller and more real than anything Victoria had known. And somehow, impossibly, they were trying to build something that bridged the distance between those worlds. Whether they'd succeed was still an open question, but for the first time in years, Victoria was willing to risk everything to find out. The swim date happened 3 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon when the autumn sun made everything feel possible again. Maya showed up at Victoria's building wearing a purple swimsuit under her clothes and carrying a unicorn pool float that was almost as big as she was. This place is huge, Maya said as they rode the elevator to the 43rd floor. Her eyes were wide, taking in the polished marble and the mirrors that made the small space feel infinite. It's too big, honestly, Victoria admitted. Most of the rooms I don't even use. That's sad. If I had a huge place, I'd use every single room. I'd put a different thing in each one, like one room just for rocks, and one room just for drawing, and one room just for eating ice cream. Ethan smiled at Victoria over Maya's head. See? This is why we can't have nice things. She'd turn them into ice cream museums. That sounds better than most museums, Victoria said. The pool was on the rooftop, enclosed in glass that made it feel like swimming in the sky. Maya's mouth dropped open when she saw it. This is the coolest thing ever. Wait until you see the view, Victoria said. They spent 2 hours in the water. Maya showed off her swimming skills, which consisted mainly of enthusiastic splashing and an approximation of freestyle that would have made any swim coach weep. Ethan stayed in the shallow end, watching his daughter with the kind of attention that suggested he was always calculating risks. She's fine, Victoria said, swimming up beside him. There's a lifeguard. I know, can't help it. The dad thing? The dad thing. Victoria understood. She watched Maya attempting to dive from the side of the pool, her form terrible, but her joy absolute. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her, even when she's giving me a heart attack. They ordered pizza afterward, eating it on the balcony while the city sprawled below them. Maya asked 1,000 questions about the buildings and the people and whether Victoria ever got scared being so high up. Sometimes, Victoria admitted, especially during storms. I like storms, Maya said. They're loud and exciting. Your daughter's fearless, Victoria told Ethan. She gets that from her mom. He said it casually, but Victoria heard the edge underneath. The reminder that someone else had been here first had left a mark that Ethan still carried. Maya finished her pizza and wandered to the edge of the balcony, pressing her face against the glass safety barrier. Can we do this again? Anytime you want, Victoria said. Really? Really? After they left, Victoria stood in her apartment and noticed things she'd stopped seeing. The silence, the lack of photos on the walls, the way everything was beautiful and sterile and empty. She'd built this space to keep people out, and it had worked perfectly. Maybe too perfectly. The following Tuesday, Victoria's assistant knocked on her office door with an expression that meant bad news. What is it? Victoria asked. There's a reporter downstairs from the Chronicle. She's asking about your relationship with Ethan Blake. Victoria's stomach dropped. Tell her no comment. I did. She said she's running a story either way, with or without your input. What kind of story? Her assistant hesitated. She has information about Mr. Blake's finances, his mortgage, his debt, his income. She's suggesting he's in financial trouble, and that might be motivating the relationship.
Victoria stood up so fast her chair rolled backward. How did she get that information? I don't know, but she said she has sources. Sources meaning someone sold her private financial information. That would be my guess. Victoria grabbed her phone and called her lawyer. 20 minutes later, she had confirmation. Someone had illegally accessed Ethan's bank records and leaked them to the press. The story would run tomorrow unless she could stop it. She called Ethan immediately. Hey, he answered, sounding distracted. What's up? We have a problem. A reporter got access to your financial information, bank accounts, mortgage, everything. The line went quiet. Then, how is that legal? It's not. But that doesn't mean they won't publish it. What kind of information are we talking about? Victoria closed her eyes. Everything. Your debt, your income, the fact that you're behind on your mortgage. I'm not behind. He stopped. I was behind. For 3 months last year when work was slow, but I caught up. They're going to use it to paint a picture, to suggest you're dating me because you need money. Of course they are. Ethan's voice was flat. When does it run? Tomorrow, unless I can stop it. Can you? I'm going to try. My lawyer's looking into an injunction. Victoria, if this comes out, it's going to affect Maya. Kids at school are going to hear their parents talking. She's already dealing with enough. I know. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault. He sighed. Look, maybe this is a sign. A sign of what? That we're fighting a losing battle. Every time we turn around, there's something new. Your parents, the press, now this. At what point do we admit it's not working? It is working. We're working. Are we? Because from where I'm standing, all we're doing is causing problems for each other. Victoria felt panic rising in her chest. Don't do this. Don't let them win. Who's them? Because it feels like the whole world is lining up to tell us this is a bad idea. Since when do you care what the world thinks? Since it started affecting my daughter. His voice rose, then dropped. I'm sorry. I'm tired, Victoria. I'm tired of defending myself. Tired of watching you have to defend me. Tired of feeling like I'm not enough. You are enough. Then why does it feel like I'm failing? Victoria didn't have an answer for that. They sat in silence, connected by technology but feeling miles apart. Let me fix this, she said finally. Give me a chance to make this right. How? I don't know yet, but I will. She hung up and immediately called her lawyer back. They worked through the night, building a case for invasion of privacy, threatening lawsuits, leveraging every connection Victoria had. By morning, they'd gotten the Chronicle to pull the story, temporarily. But everyone knew it was just a matter of time before someone else ran with it. Victoria sat in her office at 7 a.m. Exhausted and wired on too much coffee, when her phone rang. Unknown number. Victoria Hale, she answered. Ms. Hale, this is Amanda Chen from Financial Daily. I wanted to give you a chance to comment on a story we're running about your relationship with Ethan Blake. Victoria's jaw clenched. I have no comment. We have documentation showing Mr. Blake was in significant debt before you started dating. We also have sources suggesting he's been accepting financial assistance from you. That's a lie. So you haven't given him any money? Victoria thought about the time she'd picked up dinner checks. The piano lessons she'd offered to pay for that, Ethan had refused. I bought meals, like people do when they're dating. What about larger sums? Property assistance, business investments? No. And if your sources are claiming otherwise, they're lying. One more question. Is it true you're currently handling legal matters related to financial fraud from your previous relationship? Victoria's blood ran cold. How do you know about that? So it's true? That case is sealed. If you're reporting on sealed legal documents, we have sources, Ms. Hale, and the public has a right to know if you're repeating patterns. Victoria hung up. Her hands were shaking. The article ran that afternoon. It was worse than she'd imagined, a detailed breakdown of Ethan's financial situation paired with speculation about her judgment and her history with Marcus. They'd somehow gotten details about the fraud case, about the money she'd lost, about the debt she'd spent years climbing out of. And they'd connected it all to Ethan. suggesting she was either being manipulated again or was so desperate for companionship that she didn't care about the red flags. Victoria's phone exploded. Her board wanted an emergency meeting. Her mother left 3 increasingly hostile voicemails. The press camped outside her building. But the only call that mattered came at 6 p.m. "Did you see it?" Ethan asked. "Yes." Maya saw it. Well, she saw kids at school looking at their phones and whispering. She came home crying, asking if you were giving me money because we're poor. Victoria's heart shattered. "What did you tell her?" "I told her the truth, that we're not poor, we're just normal, and that sometimes people make up stories because they're bored." His voice cracked. "She asked if you were going to stop being my girlfriend because of the stories." "What did you say?" "I said I didn't know." "Ethan, Victoria, I can't do this anymore. I can't watch my daughter cry because people are saying terrible things about her dad. I can't keep pretending this is sustainable. We can fight this. I don't want to fight anymore. I'm exhausted. Maya's exhausted. And for what? So we can keep dealing with articles and lawyers and your parents looking at me like I'm garbage? You're not garbage. I know I'm not, but I'm also not the right person for your life." He took a shaky breath. "You deserve someone who fits, someone who doesn't bring all this chaos. You think you're the one bringing chaos? Ethan, this is my life. This has always been my life. The articles, the speculation, the invasion of privacy. That's what comes with who I am." "Exactly. And I can't subject Maya to that. I won't." Victoria felt tears burning her eyes. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we need to step back, take some space, figure out if this is actually worth it, or if we're just being stubborn." "I don't need space. I need you." Victoria Baum, "No. Listen to me. I have spent 3 years rebuilding my life after someone destroyed it. I've been careful and guarded and refused to let anyone close. And then you walked into that coffee shop and everything changed. You made me remember what it feels like to trust someone, to want something beyond success and safety." "I know, but I'm not finished." She was crying now, not caring who heard. "You stood up to my parents. You defended us when everyone else was tearing us apart. You introduced me to your daughter, the most important person in your world, and now you're telling me you want to step back because some reporter wrote a hit piece? It's not just the article. It's everything. Your world and mine, they don't fit together. I was stupid to think they could. They fit together when we're at the zoo. They fit together when Maya's showing me her rock collection. They fit together when you're holding my hand and I'm not thinking about money or status or any of it. They fit together when we let them." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "I'm scared." "Me too. I'm scared I'm going to wake up and realize I'm in over my head, that I'm failing Maya by exposing her to this." "You're not failing her. You're showing her what it looks like to care about someone despite the obstacles. Or I'm showing her what it looks like to be stubborn about something that's not working." Victoria wiped her eyes. "Is that what you think this is? Stubbornness? I don't know what this is anymore." She could hear the defeat in his voice, the exhaustion that came from fighting too many battles with no end in sight, and she understood it because she felt it too. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay what?" "Okay, we take space, if that's what you need." Victoria, "No, you're right. This is hard. It's been hard from the beginning, and it's not getting easier. Maybe some distance will help us figure out if we're doing this for the right reasons." "I don't want to hurt you." "Too late for that, but I get it. I do." They sat in silence, neither wanting to be the one to hang up first. Finally, Ethan spoke. "I'm sorry." "Yeah, me too." Victoria ended the call and sat in her office as the sun set over the city. Her assistant knocked once, saw her face, and quietly closed the door again. That night, Victoria went home to her empty apartment and allowed herself to fall apart. She ordered takeout she didn't eat. She started 3 different texts to Ethan and deleted them all. She stood on her balcony and looked out at the city lights and felt more alone than she'd felt in years. The next morning, she woke up to a text from Maya. Ethan must have left his phone unlocked. "Are you mad at my dad?" Victoria stared at the message for a full minute before responding. "No, sweetie, I'm not mad at anyone.
But you're not coming over anymore? Not for a little while. Your dad and I need to figure some things out. That's what grown-ups say when they're going to break up. Victoria's chest ached. Sometimes grown-ups just need time to think. I don't want you to leave. You're nice, and you think gummy bears and ice cream is weird, but you try it anyway. I tried it once, and it was still weird. But you tried. That's what matters. Victoria smiled through tears. You're pretty smart for an 8-year-old. I know. Dad says I get it from him, but I think he's lying. Tell your dad I said hi. Okay? Come back soon, okay? The house is sad without you. Victoria didn't know how to respond to that. She set down her phone and got ready for work, putting on armor in the form of a power suit and makeup that hid the fact that she'd been crying. The days blurred together. Victoria threw herself into work with the kind of intensity that worried her staff. She stayed late, came in early, filled every moment with meetings and decisions and anything that kept her from thinking about the hole in her life where Ethan and Maya had been. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Victoria told herself she was fine, that this was for the best, that some relationships just weren't meant to work out. She almost believed it. Then one Thursday evening, as she was leaving the office late, she found Ethan sitting on a bench outside her building. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Waiting for you." He stood up, looking nervous. "Can we talk?" "I thought we were taking space." "We were. We did. I've had 3 weeks to think, and I need to tell you something." Victoria's heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. "Okay." The space didn't help. If anything, it made everything worse. He took a step closer. "Maya asks about you every day. When you're coming back, why you're not texting, whether you're mad at us. And I keep telling her we're figuring things out, but the truth is, I already know." "Know what?" "That I was wrong. About all of it." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "I let fear make decisions for me. Fear of not being enough. Fear of screwing up Maya's life. Fear of getting hurt. And I convinced myself that stepping back was protecting us. But all it did was make us miserable." Victoria felt tears threatening again. "Ethan, let me finish, please." He moved closer still, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. "You were right. About everything. About the world being chaos, but us making sense anyway. About choosing each other despite the obstacles. I've spent 3 weeks trying to talk myself out of loving you, and it's not working." "You love me?" "Of course I love you. How could I not? You showed up to Maya's piano recital. You let her swim in your pool and ask invasive questions and eat gummy bear ice cream. You stood up to your parents for me. You dealt with articles and lawyers and invasions of privacy, and you never once made me feel like it was my fault. It wasn't your fault. I know, but I blamed myself anyway. And then I blamed you, and I blamed circumstances. I blamed everything except the actual problem, which was that I was too scared to believe this could work, that someone like you could actually want someone like me for real. Not because of timing or novelty or rebellion, but because we fit." Victoria's walls were crumbling. "We do fit. I know. It took me 3 miserable weeks to accept it, but I know." He reached for her hand. "I'm sorry I pushed you away. I'm sorry I let other people's opinions matter more than what we had. And I'm sorry it took me this long to realize that being scared is okay as long as we're scared together." "You really love me?" "So much it terrifies me." Victoria laughed, the sound watery and relieved. "Good, because I love you too. And I've spent 3 weeks pretending I didn't, and it's been awful." Ethan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her like he was afraid she might disappear. Victoria buried her face in his shoulder and breathed him in, sawdust and soap and something that was just Ethan. "I missed you," he said against her hair. "I missed you too." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other on a busy street while people walked past and the city moved around them. When they finally pulled apart, Ethan's eyes were wet. "So what now?" Victoria asked. "Now we try again. For real this time. No running when things get hard. No letting other people tell us what we should be." "What about Maya?" "Maya's been drawing pictures of the 3 of us. She taped one to the fridge yesterday. Apparently we're all stick figures and you're the tall one." Victoria smiled. "Can I see her?"
She'd be devastated if you didn't. Fair warning, though, she's going to ask a lot of questions about where you've been. I can handle questions. And she's going to want to know if we're back together officially, as in, she's going to interrogate us like a tiny detective. I can handle that too. Ethan kissed her forehead. You're brave. You know that? I'm terrified. Same thing sometimes. They walked to Ethan's truck hand in hand. The drive to his house felt different this time, not like crossing into another world, but like coming home. Maya was waiting on the front porch when they pulled up, like she'd sensed somehow that Victoria was coming. She launched herself off the steps and ran to the car before Victoria had even fully gotten out. You're back! Victoria caught her in a hug. I'm back. Are you staying? If that's okay with you.
Maya pulled back to look at her seriously. Are you and Dad going to do the space thing again?
No. No more space. Good, because it was stupid and you both looked sad. Ethan laughed. Maya, what? You did. You kept staring at your phone and sighing. It was pathetic. I raised a monster, Ethan said to Victoria. You raised an honest person, Victoria corrected. Same thing. They went inside and it was like Victoria had never left. Maya showed her the pictures she'd drawn, complained about a math test, and demanded they watch a movie together. They squeezed onto the couch, all three of them, and put on something animated that Maya had seen a dozen times. Halfway through, Maya fell asleep between them, her head on Victoria's lap and her feet in Ethan's. Victoria looked down at this small person who'd accepted her so completely, then up at Ethan, who was watching her with an expression that made her heart skip. Thank you, he mouthed. For what? Coming back. Where else would I go? He smiled, and it was the smile she'd fallen in love with, the one that said he saw her and chose her and wasn't going anywhere. When the movie ended, Ethan carried Maya to bed while Victoria waited in the living room. She looked around at the mismatched furniture and the photos on the walls and the life that had been built here with love and care and limited resources. It was beautiful in a way her penthouse could never be. Ethan came back and sat beside her, pulling her close. I meant what I said earlier about loving you. I know. And I mean this too. I'm not giving up again. Whatever comes next, articles, parents, financial differences, all of it, we face it together. Together, Victoria agreed, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. They sat in comfortable silence, Victoria's head on his shoulder, his hand playing with her fingers. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, the kind of suburban peace Victoria had never experienced growing up in estates and penthouses. Can I ask you something? Ethan said. Anything. The money. Does it bother you that I don't have it? Victoria thought about it carefully. Sometimes I wish things were easier for you. I wish you didn't have to stress about bills or worry about affording Maya's activities. But do I care that you're not wealthy? No, that's never been what this is about. What is it about then? You make me laugh. You challenge me. You see through the walls I put up, and you introduce me to a tiny human who thinks gummy bears belong in ice cream. She lifted her head to look at him. That's worth more than any amount of money. Even though my world is complicated, your world is real. Mine is complicated. Together, maybe we balance out. Ethan kissed her, slow and deep, and Victoria felt every doubt and fear from the past 3 weeks melt away. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Stay tonight, Sam, he said. Please. The couch pulls out, and I promise it's marginally comfortable. Victoria smiled. Okay. Yeah? Yeah. She stayed that night and the next and the one after that. Not every night. They were still figuring out boundaries and what made sense with Maya in the picture. But enough nights that Victoria's apartment started feeling less like home and more like a place she kept her stuff. And slowly, carefully, they built something that looked less like a fairy tale and more like real life. Messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. 3 months passed in a rhythm that felt both ordinary and extraordinary. Victoria learned to navigate Maya's school schedule and Ethan's work demands. Ethan learned that Victoria's version of cooking involved a lot of takeout menus and good intentions. They figured out custody of remote controls and which side of the bed each preferred,
and how to fight without making Maya worried. It wasn't perfect. Some mornings, Victoria woke up in Ethan's small bedroom and felt claustrophobic. Some evenings, Ethan visited her penthouse and felt like he was playing dress-up in someone else's life. But they talked about it. They worked through it. And slowly, the distance between their worlds started to feel less like a canyon and more like something they could bridge. Then Victoria's phone rang at 2 in the morning on a Wednesday in February. She fumbled for it, disoriented. Ethan stirred beside her. "Hello?" Her voice was rough with sleep. "Ms. Hale, this is Detective Morrison with the Fraud Division. I'm sorry to call so late, but we have a situation regarding Marcus Whitmore." Victoria sat up, suddenly wide awake. "What kind of situation?" "He's violated the terms of his parole. We believe he's attempting to access offshore accounts connected to the original fraud case, accounts that still have your name attached." Ice flooded Victoria's veins. "How is that possible? Those accounts were supposed to be frozen." "They were. But Whitmore had contingencies we didn't know about. We're trying to trace the activity now, but I need you to come down to the station. There are documents you'll need to review and sign." "Now? It's 2 in the morning. This is time-sensitive, Ms. Hale. Every hour we wait is another hour he has to move money that's legally tied to your liability." Victoria closed her eyes. Of course it was. Marcus had always been 3 steps ahead, always had backup plans for his backup plans. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. She hung up and found Ethan watching her with concern. "What's wrong?" "Marcus, he's trying to pull something with accounts from the original fraud case. I have to go downtown." "Now?" "Now." Ethan sat up. "I'm coming with you." "You don't have to. Maya's asleep and Mrs. Chen can check on her. I'm coming." They dressed quickly and quietly. Ethan left a note for his neighbor, and they drove through empty streets to the police station. Victoria's hands were shaking. She'd spent 3 years rebuilding after Marcus destroyed her, and the thought of him reaching back into her life made her want to scream. The station was fluorescent bright and smelled like bad coffee and bureaucracy. Detective Morrison was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Thank you for coming," she said, shaking Victoria's hand. Then, looking at Ethan, "And you are?" "Ethan Blake. I'm with Victoria." Morrison's eyebrow raised slightly, but she didn't comment. She led them to a conference room filled with folders and financial documents. "Here's what we know," Morrison said, spreading papers across the table. "Whitmore set up a series of shell corporations before his arrest. We found most of them, but he had 3 we missed. They've been dormant until last week when someone started moving funds. Small amounts at first, but it's escalating." Victoria scanned the documents, her stomach sinking with each page. "These accounts are in my name." "Partially. He structured them so you'd have liability, but he'd have access. If he drains them and disappears, you're on the hook for the debt." "How much debt?" "Current total? About $4 million. The room tilted. Ethan's hand found hers under the table. $4 million, Victoria repeated. "He's trying to bury me in $4 million of debt." "That's our assessment, yes." "Can she fight this?" Ethan asked. "These accounts were created through fraud. She didn't know about them." "We can try, but the legal structure is complicated. Whitmore was very good at what he did." Victoria felt rage building in her chest, hot and acidic. "Where is he?" "We don't know. He violated parole 2 weeks ago. Could be anywhere by now." "So let me get this straight. He gets out of prison, immediately violates parole, sets up a way to destroy me financially again, and you have no idea where he is?" Morrison's expression was sympathetic but firm. "We're doing everything we can, Ms. Hale. But right now, I need you to sign these documents authorizing us to freeze the accounts and begin the legal process of separating your liability." Victoria signed everything they put in front of her, her hand steady even though she felt like falling apart. When they finally left the station, dawn was breaking over the city. "I need to call my lawyer," Victoria said, pulling out her phone. "At 5 in the morning?" "She bills enough that she can answer at 5 in the morning." They sat in the car while Victoria made calls to her lawyer, to her accountant, to her CFO. Ethan listened quietly, occasionally squeezing her hand when her voice started to shake. When she finally hung up, she leaned her head back against the seat. "This is bad." "How bad?" "If they can't prove I had no knowledge of these accounts, I could be liable for all of it. 4 million plus interest and penalties. It could bankrupt me. But you didn't know. You weren't involved. Proving that is the hard part. Marcus made sure there's paperwork with my signature, emails from my account. He was thorough. Ethan was quiet for a moment. What can I do? Nothing. There's nothing anyone can do except wait and hope the lawyers can untangle this mess. Victoria, look at me. She turned to face him. You're not alone in this, he said. Whatever happens, whatever you're facing, you're not alone. Ethan, this is $4 million. That's not something you can help with. I know I can't write you a check, but I can be here. I can listen. I can remind you that you're stronger than whatever Marcus throws at you. Victoria felt tears burning her eyes. I'm so tired of fighting him. I thought I was done. I thought I'd moved past this. You did move past it. He's the one dragging you back. But that doesn't mean he wins. They drove to Ethan's house as the sun came up. Mrs. Chen was making breakfast for Maya, who was confused about why her dad had left in the middle of the night. Everything okay? Maya asked, looking between them. Everything's fine, Victoria lied. Just some work stuff. Maya didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. They ate breakfast together, scrambled eggs and toast that Mrs. Chen had made with more skill than either Victoria or Ethan possessed. Then Ethan took Maya to school, while Victoria went home to change for the day ahead. The next 3 weeks were brutal. Victoria's lawyers worked around the clock to separate her from Marcus's fraudulent accounts. The press got wind of the story and ran with it, dredging up every detail of the original case. Her parents called with thinly veiled accusations about her judgment. Her board scheduled emergency meetings to discuss the potential financial impact. And through all of it, Ethan was there. He showed up at her office with coffee when she'd been working for 12 hours straight. He fielded calls from reporters who somehow got his number. He kept Maya's life as normal as possible, even when photographers camped outside his house. You don't have to do this, Victoria said one night as they sat in her apartment, surrounded by legal documents. This isn't your problem. You're not a problem. You're the person I love who's dealing with something terrible. There's a difference. But it's affecting you, affecting Maya. The photographers at your house are annoying but manageable. Maya thinks it's kind of exciting, actually. She told her friend she's basically famous. Despite everything, Victoria smiled. She would. Besides, Ethan continued, you were there for me when the articles came out about my finances. When everyone was calling me a gold digger and questioning my motives. You didn't run. Why would I run now? Because this is worse. This is real legal trouble with real consequences. All the more reason to stay. Victoria looked at him. This man who'd stumbled into her life wearing paint-stained jeans and honest eyes. Who'd never asked her for anything except honesty and time. Who was sitting in her apartment at midnight helping her organize documents because that's what people did when they loved each other. I don't deserve you, she said quietly. That's the stupidest thing you've ever said. And you once tried to convince me pineapple doesn't belong on pizza, so that's saying something. She threw a pen at him. He caught it. Victoria, you need to hear this. You are not your mistakes. You are not what Marcus did to you. And you are definitely not some damaged person who doesn't deserve good things. Then why does it feel like I'm being punished? Because you're human, and humans sometimes get dealt bad hands. But you're also brilliant and strong, and you've built an empire twice. You'll get through this. What if I don't? What if this time he actually succeeds in destroying me? Ethan set down the document he'd been reading and moved closer to her on the couch. Then we figure it out. Maybe you lose money. Maybe you have to sell some stuff. Maybe your life looks different for a while. But you know what doesn't change? What? You're still you. You're still the person Maya adores. You're still the person I love. Money doesn't change that. Easy to say when it's not your money. You're right. It is easy to say, but it's also true. He took her hand. I've lived my whole adult life without wealth, Victoria. It's not the end of the world. It's actually fine. Sometimes it's even good. You're romanticizing being broke. I'm not romanticizing anything. I'm saying that the things that matter, family, love, purpose, those don't cost money. And if the worst thing that happens here is you end up living more like me and less like a billionaire, is that really so terrible? Victoria wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Because sitting here with him, surrounded by legal chaos and uncertainty, she felt more grounded than she had in weeks. His world, the one with mismatched furniture and tight budgets and love that didn't come with conditions, suddenly didn't seem like something she was slumming in. It seemed like somewhere she might actually want to be. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I know. So am I." "You? What are you scared of? That you'll look at me one day and realize I can't protect you from things like this. That I can't write a check or make a call or fix it with money and connections. Ethan, let me finish. I can't do those things. But what I can do is show up. Every day, every crisis, every moment when you feel like you're drowning. I can be the person who reminds you how to swim." Victoria kissed him then, desperate and grateful and terrified. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "If I lose everything," she said, "if this all falls apart and I end up with nothing, you won't have nothing. You'll have me. You'll have Maya. You'll have yourself." "That's a lot less than I'm used to." "Maybe, but it might be enough." The legal battle dragged on for 2 more months. Victoria's lawyers finally proved that she'd had no knowledge of the shell corporations, that her signatures had been forged, that Marcus had created an elaborate framework designed to trap her. The accounts were frozen. The debt was transferred to Marcus's liability. Victoria was free. But the fight had cost her. Legal fees ate into her savings. The stress had affected her work. Some clients had pulled out during the uncertainty. Her empire was still standing, but it was smaller, more vulnerable. She was sitting in her office late one Friday evening, reviewing the financial damage when her CFO knocked. "We need to talk about the Southeast property," Marcus Chen said. Victoria looked up. "What about it?" "The development stalled. Between the legal fees and the market shift, we don't have the capital to finish it. We need to either sell or find investors." "How much would selling lose us?" "About 15 million?" Victoria closed her eyes. The Southeast property had been her pride and joy, a mixed-use development that was supposed to anchor her real estate portfolio. Selling it meant admitting defeat. "What about investors?" "We'd have to give up majority control. And honestly, after the Marcus situation, people are nervous about tying their money to you." There it was, the real cost of Marcus's games. Not just money, but reputation, trust, the things she'd spent years building. "Sell it," she said. "Victoria, sell it. Take the loss. We'll rebuild." Chen nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll start the process." When he left, Victoria sat in her office and allowed herself 5 minutes to grieve for the property she was losing, for the version of herself who thought she was untouchable, for the simplicity she'd never have again. Then she called Ethan. "Hey," he answered. "How's it going?" "I'm selling the Southeast property, taking a $15 million loss. That's a lot of money." "Yeah." "How are you feeling about it?" Victoria thought about lying, about putting on the brave face she'd worn for everyone else. But this was Ethan, and she'd promised honesty. "Like I'm failing. Like Marcus is winning even from whatever hole he's hiding in. Like I'm watching everything I built crumble, and there's nothing I can do to stop it." "Okay. That's it? Okay. What do you want me to say? That 15 million doesn't matter? That you should feel fine about it? I'm not going to lie to you. So you agree I'm failing. I agree you're having to make hard choices because someone else did terrible things. That's not the same as failing." Victoria felt tears threatening. "It feels the same." "I know, but Victoria, you're still standing. You're still fighting. You're still making decisions and moving forward. That's not failure. I'm losing millions of dollars. You're also gaining perspective on what actually matters, which, and I say this with all the love in the world, you needed." "That's harsh." "It's true. You've spent the last 3 years defining yourself by what you could build and own and control. Maybe losing some of that isn't the worst thing. Easy for you to say. You're right, it is. But I've also watched you become more human in the last 6 months than you probably were in the 6 years before. More open, more vulnerable, more willing to let people in." "You think that happened because everything was going perfectly?" Victoria was quiet, processing. "You're saying this nightmare with Marcus is actually good for me?" "I'm saying that sometimes we need to lose things to figure out what we actually need, and I think you're figuring that out." "What do I need?" "You tell me." Victoria looked around her office, the expensive furniture, the awards on the walls, the view that cost a fortune. Then she thought about Maya's rock collection and Ethan's small house and the way she felt more at home on his worn couch than she ever had in her penthouse. "I need to see you," she said. "I'm at home. Come over. It's late and I look terrible and Victoria, come over." She did. She drove across town to his neighborhood with the modest houses and the working-class families and the life she'd once thought was beneath her. Ethan was waiting on the porch, and when she got out of the car, he pulled her into his arms without a word. They stood like that for a long time, Victoria letting herself be held, letting herself be weak, letting herself be exactly who she was in that moment instead of who she thought she should be. "I don't know how to do this," she said against his shoulder. "Do what?" "Lose. I've spent my whole life fighting to win, and now I'm losing and I don't know how to accept it." Maybe you're not losing. Maybe you're just realizing that the game you were playing doesn't matter as much as you thought. What game should I be playing? The one where you get to be happy. The one where success is measured in people who love you instead of properties you own. That's very philosophical for almost midnight. I've been reading Maya's self-help books for kids. They're surprisingly deep. Victoria laughed despite everything. "You're ridiculous. And you love me anyway? I really do." They went inside. Maya was asleep, but Victoria peeked into her room anyway, watching this small person who'd accepted her so completely, who didn't care about her bank account or her properties or her status, who just wanted her to show up and try gummy bear ice cream and be present. "She drew another picture," Ethan whispered, pointing to a new drawing on Maya's desk. It showed 3 stick figures in front of a house that was either very small or very badly drawn. "That's us. Apparently we all live together now." In her imagination or as a request? With Maya, it's hard to tell the difference. Victoria stared at the drawing, at the simple representation of a life that was nothing like what she'd planned and everything she hadn't known she wanted. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Always. If I lost everything, the company, the money, all of it, would you still want this? Us?" Ethan turned to face her fully. "Victoria, I've never wanted any of that. I've only ever wanted you. The messy, scared, brilliant, complicated you, with or without the billions. That's a lot to take on faith. Then let me prove it to you." 2 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon when the world felt quiet and possible, Ethan took Victoria to the park where he used to take Maya when she was little. It was nothing special. A playground with rusty swings and a duck pond that was more algae than water. The kind of place billionaires never went. Maya was at a friend's birthday party. It was just the 2 of them. "Why are we here?" Victoria asked as they walked along the path. "Because this is real life. Not penthouses or estates or places designed to impress people. Just a regular park where regular people go." "Okay, and I wanted to ask you something in a place that represents the life I can actually give you." Victoria's heart started pounding. "Ethan." He pulled a small box from his pocket and got down on one knee right there on the path, with the rusty swings behind him and the algae pond to his left. "This isn't fancy," he said. "I can't offer you diamonds the size of your fist, or a proposal in Paris, or any of the things you're probably used to. What I can offer is a life that's real and imperfect, and full of people who love you for exactly who you are. Ethan, I'm not done." Victoria Hale. "You walked into a coffee shop 6 months ago trying to sabotage a blind date, and instead you changed my entire world. You made me believe in love again. You made Maya believe that family can look different than what we thought. And you made me want to be brave enough to ask you this." He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, silver, with a small stone that caught the light. Not expensive, not flashy, just honest. "Will you marry me?" he asked. "Will you build a life with me and Maya? Will you let me love you through every crisis and celebration and ordinary Tuesday? Not because of what you have, but because of who you are." Victoria was crying. "The ring, it's not what you're used to. I know, but it's what I can afford. And I wanted everything about this to be honest." She dropped to her knees in front of him, not caring that the path was dirty or that someone might see.
Yes. Yeah? Yes. Absolutely yes. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. This simple, honest symbol of a love that had survived doubt and distance and attacks from every direction. They kissed there in the park, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their separate disasters and built something that was stronger for having been tested. When they pulled apart, Ethan was grinning. You just agreed to marry a furniture restorer who lives in a small house and drives a truck that needs new brakes. I know exactly what I agreed to. Your parents are going to hate this. They already hate this. Now they can hate it with a wedding to complain about. Fair point. They sat on a bench by the pond, Victoria's head on Ethan's shoulder, the ring on her finger feeling both strange and right. I'm still probably going to lose more money from the Marcus situation, she said. The Southeast property is just the beginning. Okay. And my company might shrink. I might not be a billionaire anymore. Okay. And the press is going to have a field day with this. Single dad furniture restorer marries formerly wealthy Victoria Hale. They'll say you're after whatever I have left. Let them talk. It's going to be complicated. Everything worth having is complicated. Victoria lifted her head to look at him. You're really okay with all of this? With who I am and what I'm dealing with? Victoria. I fell in love with you when you were wearing an oversized sweatshirt and actively trying to scare me off. Nothing that's happened since has changed that. You could lose every penny and it wouldn't matter. You could end up living in my small house with my old truck and I'd be the luckiest person alive. You might actually end up with that scenario. Then I'll be lucky. They told Maya that night. She screamed so loud the neighbors probably heard. I knew it. I knew you were going to get married. Can I be in the wedding? Can I wear a fancy dress? Are you going to live with us now? Can we get a dog? One thing at a time, Ethan laughed. But yes to the dress, Victoria added. Definitely yes to the dress. Maya hugged them both, her joy uncomplicated and absolute. This, Victoria thought, was what mattered. Not properties or portfolios, but this small person who was excited about a fancy dress and the possibility of a dog. The wedding planning was chaos. Victoria's mother tried to take over, suggesting venues that cost more than Ethan's annual salary. Victoria vetoed all of them. They settled on the park where Ethan had proposed, with a reception at a community center that Maya helped decorate. This is insane, Victoria's mother said when she saw the venue. You're a Hale. You can't get married in a park. Watch me, Victoria replied. Her father didn't even come to the wedding. He sent a card with a check and a note about how he hoped she knew what she was doing. Victoria tore up the check and kept the card as a reminder of what she was leaving behind. But her board came. Her assistant came. Mrs. Chen from next door came and cried through the whole ceremony. Maya stood beside Victoria as her maid of honor, wearing a purple dress she'd picked out herself and holding a bouquet of flowers that she'd insisted include daisies because they were happy flowers. Ethan cried when Victoria walked down the makeshift aisle. She'd chosen a simple dress, elegant but not ostentatious, and she'd never felt more beautiful or more sure. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Ethan promised to love her through every crisis and to remind her what mattered when she forgot. Victoria promised to trust him even when she was scared and to keep showing up even when her world was falling apart. I never thought I'd find this, Victoria said, her voice shaking. I thought I was too damaged, too complicated, too much. But you showed me that the right person doesn't need perfect. They just need real. You are real, Ethan said, and you're exactly what I need. They kissed as husband and wife, and Maya cheered so loudly that everyone laughed. The reception was simple, pizza and cake, and dancing to a playlist Maya had helped create. Victoria's assistant got drunk and told everyone about how scared she'd been when Victoria first started dating Ethan, convinced it would end in disaster. But look at them, she said, gesturing wildly. They're perfect. Well, not perfect, but perfect for each other. Does that make sense? It makes complete sense, Victoria said, hugging her. Later, when the party wound down and Maya fell asleep on a chair with frosting on her face, Victoria and Ethan slow danced alone in the community center. We did it, Ethan said. We really did. How do you feel? Terrified. Happy. Like I just jumped off a cliff and I'm not sure if I'm flying or falling.
Probably both. That's not comforting. It's honest, Victoria laughed. I love you. I love you too, even though you're definitely going to critique how I organize my workshop when you move in. It's chaos in there. Someone needs to organize it. See? This is already going well. They moved into Ethan's house the following month. Victoria kept her penthouse for a while, using it as an office, but eventually sold it. The money went toward paying down debt from the Marcus situation and setting up a college fund for Maya. Her company continued to shrink. She lost more properties, more clients, more of the empire she'd built. By the end of the year, she was no longer a billionaire. She was just wealthy, which felt both like failure and freedom. I thought I'd be more devastated, she told Ethan one night as they sat on their porch. Their porch now, in their small house with the yard that needed mowing. Are you devastated at all? A little, but also relieved, like I've been carrying this weight my whole life and someone finally told me I could put it down. You can always pick it back up, build it again if you want. Maybe. Or maybe I'll figure out what I actually want instead of what I thought I should want. What do you want? Victoria looked at him, then at Maya inside doing homework at the kitchen table, then at the neighborhood around them with its ordinary houses and ordinary families. This, she said simply, I want this. Maya started calling Victoria Mom about 6 months after the wedding. She didn't make a big deal about it, just slipped it into conversation one day. Mom, can you help me with my math homework? Victoria had frozen, not sure if she'd heard correctly. Maya had looked up, suddenly uncertain. Is that okay? I know you're not my real mom, but it's more than okay, Victoria had said, her voice thick. I'd be honored. They never talked about it again. Maya just kept saying it, and Victoria kept answering, and slowly it stopped feeling strange and started feeling right. Life settled into a routine that was nothing like what Victoria had known before. She worked, but not 80-hour weeks. She made dinner, though it often involved a lot of cursing and some minor fires. She went to school events and helped with homework and learned that success could be measured in a child's smile instead of portfolio growth. Some days she missed her old life, the power, the control, the certainty that came with wealth. But most days she looked at Ethan and Maya and the life they'd built together and felt richer than she'd ever been with billions in the bank. A year after the wedding, on a quiet Tuesday evening, Victoria sat in their backyard watching Ethan teach Maya how to build a birdhouse. They were arguing good-naturedly about whether birds preferred blue or yellow houses, and Maya was covered in sawdust. What do you think, Mom? Maya called. Blue or yellow? Purple, Victoria said. Obviously. That's not even an option. It is now. Purple houses for rebellious birds. Ethan looked over at her and smiled, and in that moment Victoria understood something she'd spent her whole life missing. Happiness wasn't about achieving some perfect life or accumulating enough success to feel secure. It was about this: sitting in a yard that needed mowing, watching the people you loved argue about bird preferences, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but you'd face them together. She'd lost an empire. She'd lost wealth and status and the armor she'd worn for years. But she'd gained something infinitely more valuable, a life that was real and messy and hers. Marcus never resurfaced. The legal battles eventually concluded, leaving Victoria with scars but not destruction. Her company stabilized at a smaller size, focused on projects she actually cared about rather than endless expansion. Her parents remained distant, unable to accept the life she'd chosen. But she made peace with that too. Some stories don't end with everything tied up neatly. Some stories end with people who are still figuring it out, still making mistakes, still choosing each other despite the complications. Victoria and Ethan's story was one of those. They fought sometimes about money and boundaries and how to raise Maya. They disagreed about everything from politics to pineapple pizza. They had days when the differences between their worlds felt impossible to bridge. But they showed up. Every day, through every challenge, they showed up. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. On their second anniversary, Ethan took Victoria back to the coffee shop where they'd first met. It was still the same: chipped paint, grinding espresso machine, mismatched furniture. They sat in the same booth where Victoria had tried to sabotage their date, where Ethan had sat down anyway and changed everything. You know what I think about sometimes? Ethan said. What? How close we came to never happening. If I'd listened to the voice in my head telling me you obviously didn't want to be there, if you'd succeeded in scaring me off, if either of us had given up during any of the hard parts. But we didn't. No, we didn't. He took her hand across the table. And I'm grateful for that every single day. Even when I burn dinner, especially when you burn dinner, it's become endearing. Liar. Okay, it's not endearing, but I love you anyway. Victoria squeezed his hand, the simple gesture that meant everything. I love you too, even though you still think pineapple belongs on pizza. It does. It absolutely does not. They walked out of the coffee shop hand in hand back into the world that had tried so hard to keep them apart. But they'd learned something that world hadn't counted on. Love wasn't about being from the same place, or having the same advantages, or fitting into predetermined boxes. Love was about choosing someone every day, about showing up even when it was hard, about building something real instead of something perfect. And as Victoria and Ethan drove home to Maya and their small house and the life they'd created together, they knew they'd made the right choice. Not because everything was perfect, but because they'd chosen each other, and that was enough. It would always be enough.